just kind of figuring out how to start. I had several different things going to my mind this afternoon and actually over last week. But today I think we'll get back to the text we've been studying, Exodus chapter 16. The Lord's been speaking to us over the last couple of weeks. Last week was kind of intense, and we're not going there tonight. You can take it easier. But I believe last week was a prophetic word for the church. And the word I kept using was change, change, change. But this afternoon I realized that a better way to put that is growth. Because the changes were going to come through growth. And change is a scary word for a lot of people. You don't like to change, like things to stay where they are, and don't want a lot of changes come along. But just kind of go back there just for a minute. The change I was talking about was going to come through growth. And it's the natural, changes come naturally through growth. Just like a baby is born. And as it grows, it changes. You know, when it's born, it has a little soft spot in its head. It can't hold its head up very well. So it has to grow and develop. And as it grows, it changes. The things that it can do changes. The things that it needs changes. The things that it can do for itself changes. At first, it's totally the most helpless thing on the face of the earth is a human baby. There may be a few other species that are pretty helpless, but about the most helpless thing there is on the face of the earth is a human baby. It needs everything done for it. So, the parents provide that. But as it grows, it's able to do more and more things for itself. And so the parents, it's a challenge. I've never been there. Never had an experience myself. But it's a challenge for the parents to know how much to do, how much not to do, when to back off. And, you have to learn that God bless the firstborn. It's a learning process. It's amazing my learning to ride with the parents and the firstborn. Because they're learning how to be parents and to shepherd the growth of that child from the baby into the adult. And that's what God does with us. We come into the kingdom as babies, spiritual babies. Clueless what's going on, don't know up from sickle when we're first born again. But God is there to be the parent for us, to be the father for us, to teach us and to guide us through those changes that result from growth. So that's one way to know if we're growing, is if we're experiencing changes in our life. If we're not experiencing changes in our spiritual life, that's a huge red flag. It should be a wake-up call that we're not growing. And the thing about it is, physically, we come to a point where we stop growing. But there is no end to the possibility of our spiritual growth. We'll never arrive at everything God has or who God is. But we're going to keep growing. Keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. And one scripture I read last week was about, by now you should be grown, you should be mature, but you still need milk. You shouldn't be 30 years old and drinking out of a bottle. Your little sippy cup, and you have your little beaky, your little passy. There shouldn't be 30-year-old babies in the church. We should be growing, which brings about changes. So if I scared you last week, just think of it in a different way. Growing will bring changes, but they're healthy changes that God has ordained. and meant to be. So that's what we want to pursue in growing. And the ways that we grow is the way God is leading us. Because when we pursue God and what He has for us, the growth that comes from that will be healthy. And there will be changes. And we have to deal with those, accept those, but they're in God's plan. So think about the growth we're going to see. And we have room for growth, but it's coming. But we have to prepare for that ahead of time. We can't sit back and wait for a flood of people to come in, and then what are we going to do? And we've got to be prepared ahead of time, have a plan as best we can, hear from God and plan ahead, and then adjust to it as it comes. Like your praise and worship even tonight. We have a set list where we have our sheets that we go by. But sometimes we deviate from that. We go a different way as the Spirit leads us. But we have a plan that we prepared ahead of time, that we've prayed about, sought God for. We know what we're going to do. We have a plan going into it. Then sometimes God comes in and changes it. And that's an awesome thing. When God intervenes and manifests and changes. And to me, that's one way of knowing that God is real. It's not just us thinking up things to do, whether it's the church things, praise and worship, or anything else. It's when God manifests into something and leads us in a different direction. So changes that are coming are going to be good because they're going to result from growth. The growth God has planned for us. It's already been spoken. The word came to Brother Don many times. If you will build it, I will fill it. So that's going to mean growth in numbers and changes. But we have to remember and not forget that in the growth of numbers, we don't forget the spiritual growth. We've got to have that as our foundation and grow spiritually. So that's why we have the preaching, we have the teaching. We all ought to be individually studying and praying too. And I know the last few weeks, God's really been dealing with me, and I've been seeking God more than I have in a long time. And God changed me. There have been situations that have come up, and I think, change them, change the situation, do something about them. But then I keep thinking, God changed me. Let God deal with them, and you deal with yourself. So God has been dealing with me, and I have been seeking to allow God to change me, work in me, and I can already see the fruit. I can feel it. I mean, I'm not the way I was a month ago, 2 weeks ago, last week, or I feel like even earlier this afternoon. Because I'm just trying to seek God. God, have your way. However you want, whatever change you want to make it. And I'll deal with it. Because if it's coming from you, I know it's what I need. So we've got to be seeking God. And as we do, we'll be growing and we'll be changing. Spiritually, just like we do physically. So, Israel in Exodus chapter 16. Let's see. Was still struggling with because they were still babies. I mean, you couldn't have been much more babies than they were. Because they had been in Egypt for 400 years. They knew there was a God out there, someone that was their God. The Egyptians had dozens and dozens and dozens of gods. And they knew they had one, but they really didn't know him. He had revealed himself to them. But through the process of delivering them from Egypt, he had begun to reveal himself to them. So they were beginning to know him, but they were still babies because they hadn't spent time with him enough yet. And he had revealed himself enough to them yet for them to have more than just a baby's amount, an infant amount of knowledge of who he is. So they're still learning. But we can learn from the process and things that they went through. So in chapter 16, they had left an oasis where they had been provided for. The God had called them out from there. So they started to travel through the desert. But they had a complaint, which is a very natural, normal complaint, is they had no food. Where are they going to eat? How are they going to eat? Back in Egypt, they had all they could eat and more. And now they're in the desert. So, wah, wah, wah. It's like a baby, when they're hungry, they're going to cry. They're going to let you know that they're hungry. And you need to do something about it. They're going to complain. So Israel is whang, whang, whang to God. But they're complaining to Moses and Aaron. Because they can't see God, but they can see Moses and Aaron. Pastor, they can see Pastor. They got a complaint? Well, they can see Pastor. So he's going to hear it. Because he's the one to complain to. He's the complaint department. Now there'll be a sign over his head, complaint department, because he's going to hear, a sign with 2 big ears on it. Because he's going to hear the complaints. Well, Moses and Aaron, as the representatives of God, they were hearing it. And they kind of got tired of it pretty quick. But God understands, it's like the baby's crying because it's hungry. You understand. So you're going to feed the baby. And God says right here in verse 4, the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread down from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they will walk in my law or not. And it shall be on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." So here God has given a solution. He says, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. Here's what you do. I'm going to rain down bread and manna for you from heaven. And he gave them instructions on what to do. As it came down, it said, for 6 days, go out and gather. Or for 5 days, go out and gather enough for that day. The 6th day, you're going to gather twice as much. And it says he did that to test them. It's going to test them to see if they would be greedy and get more than they actually needed. And that's because there was plenty there. There was more than enough there. But he said, get just a certain quota, a certain amount, and no more. Because he's going to test them to see how obedient they were going to be. But there was enough, more than enough. Because there had to be more than enough, or they would be tempted to get more. So as they went out and gathered this, they saw before their very eyes, literally saw the provision of God in a material, manifested way. Now all they had to do was reach down and pick it up. He was there for them every day. And on the 6th day, they got twice as much. He was testing how faithful you're going to be. Later on in the New Testament, it just tells a parable about, it says that those who are faithful in little will be faithful in much. So you have to be faithful in a little. You'll be tested and proved before you're given more. And that's what God is seeing. If they could follow basic, simple instructions. There's nothing hard about just getting all you need for one day. There's nothing hard about that at all. 2 plus 2, ABC. Very simple. Can you obey this simple instruction? So as they go on, day by day, they're being tested. And we know eventually that they failed all the tests that God had for them. But this is the beginning. So we're starting here, again, taking baby steps. And that's what we are. But we can't be babies 20 years later. And that's what this older generation of Israel was. The younger generation made it through, but the older generation never grew past a certain point. They complained, they complained, they complained, they complained. The whole time they were journeying toward the promised land. And in fact, they didn't make it because of their complaining and complaining and complaining. So how much are we missing out by complaining? If someone has a comment, you can break in. And let me say this too. Sometimes when I'm teaching, I get really into it. And sometimes, like last week, was a prophetic word. So there really wasn't much room for discussion and that kind of thing. And that will probably happen again. But on a night like this, feel free to comment and share. I don't want it to be just a one-man show just because I have the microphone. But like I said, sometimes that will be more like that. But because the way that I teach and the way that God has just enabled me and called me and anointed me to teach in a certain way. But I don't want to, like I said, make it a one-man show. So feel free if you ever have something to add to what we're doing here. In verse 7 it says, "In the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. But what are we that you complain against us?" Also Moses said, "There shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaints which you make against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord." So it's starting to sound like Moses and Aaron are kind of getting tired of complaints and being blamed for everything that's going wrong. It's like, we didn't get you into this. God did. Don't blame us, blame God. Because they were catching flack from everybody because of what was going on, what they had to go through. But, that also parallels something that Jesus said later on. He said, if they persecute me, they'll persecute you. Yep. If the world persecutes me and hates me, they'll hate you. And they'll hate us because we have the Lord living in us, living through us. Here's the same thing. Moses and Aaron are trying to follow and do what God told him to do. About be obedient to him. And so they're just following God's directions. And they're catching all the flack for it. And so will we when we follow God. We'll be persecuted. People will talk about us. And it's like, is that really such a bad thing? Does that really hurt us when people talk about us? I could care less. Say whatever you want. It's already been said. I don't care. You can't get me because I don't meet God. Take your best shot. There have been stuff said about me that by Christians. Okay? People in the church have said the worst things about me than people in the world. So I don't care what the world says. I don't care what people in church say. Because I know what God says about me.
Amen.
I know who I am
Yeah.
in God.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter what anybody says. Take your best shot. Because it's like this. You can't kill a dead man. Take your best shot. It's not gonna matter. I don't know where that came from. It mattered somewhere. It related to something. But basically, it doesn't matter what people think. You know, brother, you give testimony about what people say about the church and you. They avoid you. They go the other way when they see you. It doesn't matter. That's their choice. What people do, what people say.
Linda and I was in a restaurant, and preacher that I know real well, and I done this, he kind of, went in, got our food, we come back, and everything sitting around, and they had to come right by us. And I don't, one of us went up to get something for Linda or myself, or whatever, and I asked Linda, I said, did this preacher, and I called his name. I said, did he speak to you? And she said, no, he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, but let me say this, don't let it bother
Amen.
you, you know, because I got one God's given me here,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and I've got some loving people.
Right.
So I'm like you, what they say about me out there, I don't think anybody talks about me in church. If they do, outside Betty May. But if they do, that's fine too, amen? But what I'm saying to all of you, don't let people bother you.
Right. Amen.
Just go on with it, you know?
Yes.
Just like that preacher, I've known him for a long, long, long time. But now, he may not have meant anything by it, but the way I've been treated by other preachers, that's the first thing come to my mind, you know, okay? So, but what I'm saying, don't let other people
Right.
bother you. If they won't speak to you, that's fine. You walk in them doors, you'll get spoken to,
Yeah.
you
Amen.
know?
You know the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. But words do hurt.
Words, they hurt.
Words can hurt.
Sometimes no words hurt.
That's right, absolutely.
I got you. Not changing the subject. Don't you know that dinner was good that God gave?
It was. They talking about artists and baking, but they wouldn't have nothing on what God made. I think later on it gives the kind of description of, such as like coriander, whatever that is, and other things, but, yeah.
What?
Wait for what's on.
Wait for it with honey.
That's what they consider with bread. Wait for some.
Yeah. So you can compare what the world will give you and what's available with the world and what God can give you. You know, manna from heaven. I mean, that's, made by the hand of God. And you can't get any better than that.
Nope.
So that's what we want around here. We want things that God's hand is upon. The church and the ministries, whoever's coming in. And we really be praying for the people that will be coming in.
Yeah.
Not just that people will come in, but
Right.
the people.
Yes.
I mean, we're not going to know all the specific people that are coming in, but God does. So as we pray, not just more people, but the people that will be coming in. Because God has a plan for each seat and a person to be in that seat, that to build this body. Put together by the hand of God. You can't get, talking about hand-built, man-made, or hand-built, handmade, it's supposed to be, always supposed to be better. But just think about handmade by the hand of God. I mean, you talk about a masterpiece, something that would be beautiful, be perfect in its manifestation. And that's what God wants you to knit together and bring together all the pieces to make a whole that is far beyond the parts that we'll put together to make it, and that will reflect the glory of God. And that's what we want. I couldn't care less about this place being packed to the gills with people just because we did something to get people in the building. You can do things like that and get people in. But that's the last thing we want. We do want it packed to the gills, but we want to get it that way by following God's plan and God's purpose for what He wants in here. And we want to see that and be part of that. So if it's going to happen, it's going to be through God's power, where He's going to use us. He's going to use us, the ones that are here. So our assignment, first of all, is to worship God and seek God, and then to try to find out what our place is here, what part we have to play, what we have to offer, what we have to give, what God's plan is for us. Now, I know I'm supposed to be here, because I got a call or a message one night, out of the blue, but I know the hand of God was in it and got me here. And I came here with no agenda. I just came to visit first, then I felt like I was supposed to be here, just serve and help in whatever way I can. And I love what I'm doing. And I'll do whatever I can to help, because that's why I'm here. But we're all here for a purpose.
Amen.
And especially the ones that are here now are doing things. They're moving and working in the church. But as a church, if we want to see God's will manifest, we have to continue to seek Him and His guidance. And when we do that, we're going to see glory beyond what we can ask or imagine. There's a verse, I quoted a while back. It does not say unto you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God. Did I not say unto you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? When we believe and we're obedient to what God has done, just like here He tested them, okay? I'm going to give you a simple little assignment. Real easy. He tested them. He's given us assignments. Okay? This is one real easy little thing. Can you do this one little thing? And if you can do that, I can trust you with another assignment, and another assignment, and more responsibility. If we are faithful and obedient in what God's given us to do. It's a step-by-step thing, and it's called growth, which brings changes. So we're in that stage of growth. And for some of us, it was just like planting a seed in the ground. It goes through a growing stage. It takes time. But then, once it's grown to a certain point, it starts bearing fruit. Okay? So it has to grow to a certain point where the seed's been planted in here and it's starting to break through the ground. So we're in that growth stage. And if we just keep pressing on, we keep pressing on, seeking God and growing, we're going to see that fruit manifest. And it's going to be an abundant harvest, more than we can ask or imagine. We're going to pass the test. If we fail the test, we get to go back and do it again. And do it again. And do it again. I've never done that myself. I mean, I always get it right the first time around. You know, some of y'all need to get with the program.
Here's where
I'm
the
not,
discussions will come in.
yeah, I'm not going to call names. But, you know, either get with it or get left behind. Because you know, I'm going to get around winners. I'm not going to be around much. That's it. Okay. I think I better shut up. Because I'm getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. But does anybody want to discuss anything else?
I'm gonna be nice.
You're not let that slide. Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all's patience and listening up so well and putting up with me because I know I'm a little different. Okay. A little different, but you just hang in to get used to me, and we'll get there. It's gonna be all right. Yeah.
Give him a hand.